Welcome everybody to this World Satsanga held on the 28th of September 2019, and it's obviously in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show, and I thank Kevin again for the work he's been doing over the years, and obviously with broadcasting the information from the World Satsanga on his own YouTube channel, The Moore Show and More Talk. And I apologise if there's a little bit of an echo here. I'm actually in my little, shall I say, traditional Cretan cottage in Crete, and it's quite wonderful to experience the energies here. And I've actually got quite a few, shall we say, other entities observing what's going on here, because this is the first time that they will have experienced the World Satsanga being actually created in the same environment that they're normally used to, with me not really communicating with them in any other way other than asking them questions or seeing what's going on. So, without more ado, let's look at the what's going on today in terms of the agenda for the World Satsanga in September, and the first part is to look at the different types of reality. Now, the different types of reality have come from the book which is just being published, The Curators, and is also part of the Road to Sentience presentation that I've given as a result of some of the information from the Curators. Then we're going to look at a number of questions that have been sent in already, which is fantastic, and thank you very much for sending those questions in. Actually, in this instance, it's been sent in by one individual, JM, who's in the far Western Hemisphere, and thank you, JM, for your dedicated understanding or desire to understand and ask lots of different questions, because actually it's the questions that makes the difference. You know, it's all right just reading the information, but unless you're questioning the information and trying to get a deeper understanding, it doesn't actually sink in properly. Although some people do get downloads as a result of reading the books, but it's good to really, ask questions and understand deeper. And then the end of my meditation is actually to how to change your reality, which I'm fairly sure a lot of individuals who are listening to the Satsanga in and around the world, in different parts of the world, with all the different things that are happening concurrently, would want to know how to do. Okay, so let's have a look at the different types of reality. As I said, this is from the presentation, The Road to Sentience and the Greater Reality, and most of the information has been taken from certainly in terms of the road to sentience from the Origin Speaks, but the information on what different realities are, what the different event spaces are, have been taken from the Curators. But we're just talking about a reality in this instance rather than actually event space, because different types of event space, we know that, but different realities are created within different event space. So I'll start with a definition of what is a reality. And a reality is an environment and interactive condition that we create as a desired function of an event space or event stream. So in essence, it's something that we create because it's an entity or being generated, perceived or base condition. Okay. So in real terms, it's something that we create around ourselves in terms of how we interact with what we're experiencing, and how we're interacting with those other entities or beings that are also experiencing what we're experiencing and the environment that we're experiencing it within. Now, if we look at a reality, we talk about alternative realities. And an alternative reality is something which is not in the same direction to the standard reality. So an alternative reality is generally a person or personal or group-based perception. This is a group-based perception or a desire for a certain experiential environment within a known environment, relative to their thoughts, behaviours and actions, and the desire to ignore that which one doesn't desire to interact with. So basically, this is what most individuals do. If they don't want to work with the existing reality, they choose to create their own. And some people create their own very successfully, and some people don't create it very successfully. But the interesting thing to note is that most individuals create a reality and they don't actually know that they're doing it. Okay, so that's an alternative reality. There's also something called a multiversal reality. Now, think of it in terms of the greater reality first, and then bringing it down, further and further and further and smaller and smaller and smaller until it's the sort of localized reality. So based upon that, we're going to work with multiversal realities and then come down into the smaller localized realities later. So a multiversal reality is the experiential condition that is created by the governing entities responsible for a specific multiversal environment within a specific source entity. So a multiversal reality is based upon there being a multiverse if a particular source entity has created a multiverse. It might be a multi-multiverse, it might be a monoverse, it might be an omniverse, it might be just a universe, it might just be a location. Okay, but in our instance, we have a source entity that's created a multiversal environment. So this is really to do with us, our source entity, and what is created for us on its behalf to experience, learn, and evolve with. So this creates something called the multiversal reality. Now there's something much larger than this, which is the overall reality. And this is the experiential condition that's created by the existence of the sentience, that is the origin. So in real terms, this is the overall reality, which is governing everything. But that is that the origin is what it is. It's a being, rather not an entity. It's a being that has been created by the Darwinian evolution of energies gathering together or working together to create a common function of desiring to club together or group together and then actively seek each other out and go through the intelligence, self-awareness, consciousness, creativity, and therefore sentience later. So the overall reality is to do with that which is the origin. That's the overall reality. Everything else is sort of localized. So multiversal reality is a localized reality created by a source entity within itself, in this which is our source entity in this instance. So if we go through the multiversal reality and come down to the universal reality, we find out that a universal reality is a smaller representation of the multiversal reality in so much as it starts out to be that when a multiverse and its universal components are first introduced as a medium for evolutionary progression. So in essence, it's an environment or a reality-based environment within a reality. So if we think about the overall reality being the origin, then you've got a localized reality, which is one of the source entities. Within them, within our source entity, we've got this multiversal reality, and within that, we've got another reality called the universal reality, which is specific to an environment within that particular multiversal environment. Now, within that, we've got something called a global reality, which is a further dissection of the overall theme of reality, and it's relevant to an area within a universal reality that affects a large but not significant number of entities or beings within the universal environment. So in effect, you can almost classify this as being almost galactic sized or solar system sized, nebula sized, or even localized planetary body sized, if you want to. But in essence, it's something which is much larger than that which is quite obviously individualized reality, but it's more to do with a group of individuals that are working together. So when you work down from that, you go to the local reality, and the local reality is the official start of the convolution of realities within realities. This is a reality within the universal reality, of course, which is in the universal, which is the multiversal reality, which is in the overall reality. So, and local realities can vary in size and number, depending upon the number of interactive entities or beings within it. So local realities can be created by ourselves as a group, so to speak. So this is, if you like, a whole planetary reality where we decide that we are going to work together in some way or not, as the case may be. It might even be something we all, as a planetary system, or all the entities in a planetary system all together relate to, in terms of, we all experience or we all know certain things happening in certain countries and we accept them. And that's where a local reality is, the acceptance of things that are happening around you, and not really trying to change them in any way, shape or form. Well, the next level down from the local reality is the locally individualized reality. And this is relevant to small groups of entities within a local reality, such as those living in a certain country. So the local reality is a planetary system, for instance, or even a galactic system, but a locally individualized reality is basically individuals within a smaller environment, in this instance a country. So this occurs when a number of entities are aware of a local reality but are unable to change the reality that's been changed for them by more influential entities. And this would be a good example of what's been happening to some of our political systems on this planet right now, where we know that we didn't want certain things to happen, but for some reason there's been no particular way in which we collectively have been able to change the way in which that locally individualized reality has moved forwards. Okay. And has been created, and it's sort of, you know, you've only look at what's going on in the States, what's going on in the UK, what's going on in different parts of the world. You know, things are happening without really us understanding how they happened, but we've bought into it. Now, this is the buying into these things, or the acceptance of these things, that creates the cohesion of a locally individualized reality that is created by a small group of entities or individuals. And it sticks and becomes larger and becomes more robust. So if we decide to not accept these realities, then they can't exist. And so things that have been happening, for instance, with Brexit or other things that are going on in various different locations, like Hong Kong and China, for instance, you know, lots of different things are happening that are quite interesting to observe. And it's because, you know, collectively we've allowed it to happen. And maybe it should happen. Maybe these things are there to allow us to understand that, you know, realities are there and we create them, or we allow them to be created. And that, you know, if we support their creation, then they continue to be in existence. The next part is the individualized reality, which is in effect what entities or beings with individualized free will choose to create around them. So in some instances, the fully individualized reality can create full separation from the greater reality. So the individualized reality is, for instance, me creating my own reality around myself and choosing to ignore that which is going on around me. And if you want to think of it in this way, it's like being like divorcing yourself what's going on around you and just existing in the way you want to. And Dolores Cannon talked about, you know, that's not my reality, that's your reality. I don't accept that this is working in this way, so I'm going to exist in my way. So Dolores maintained her own reality based upon what she wanted to work with, and I tend to do the same. I don't tend to look or listen to the news very often at all. I don't really want to get involved with politics as such. I don't want to get involved with things that I consider to be not what I'm interested in, for instance. So I start to create my own reality based upon disassociating myself with the things that are happening around me that other people would want to be involved with. And so by disassociating myself, I become in the physical but not of the physical. And so I can then focus on the aspects that I'm supposed to be working on, which is helping other individuals exist in their incarnate state, but also lift their frequencies so they can start to understand that they are normally not incarnate and that they are normally part of a much higher frequential state of sentience and energy. So those are different types of realities, basically. So let me just go into a summary. We've got the overall reality, for instance. We've got an alternative reality. We've got a universal reality. We've got a multiversal reality. We've got a global reality, a local reality, a locally individualized reality, and an individualized reality. And if you wish, you can go onto my website, which is www.beyondthesource.org. Look on the events tab, scroll down to lectures, and in there you will see the PDF files of the presentations that I've done over the years, and one of those is called The Road to Sentience. And the information that I've just talked about in summary is on there as well, so you can have a look and go over it again. Okay, right, so let's go to the questions now we've got, and the questions are from JM, and JM is a wonderful individual who's helping the ascension, or us all to ascend in his own way, in the Western Hemisphere, the far Western Hemisphere. And I think there's around 8 questions here, so it's quite good, because some of the other satsangs we've had lots and lots of questions, and we've gone over time, which is fair enough, because some people want to understand the questions. But sometimes it's nice to have a slightly shorter satsanga, and it gives people a chance to sort of listen to it twice, or even 3 times if you want to, and therefore absorb the information in more detail, because there's less of it. Rather than having too much detail, if there's less detail, you can go to deeper depths. Okay. So first question here is in the chapter 28 of History of God. Hum tells you, Hum was the entity that was given to me as a guide to help me go further the frequencies, just to remind you, those of you who haven't read the History of God. So Hum tells me that you won't need him soon, as you'll be able to communicate with any being or entity you wish without guidance or backup. Have you reached that state? To be able to communicate with any being anywhere? Have you lost contact with Hum since you don't need him anymore? Hum. I would say that I know of Hum's existence still. I'm aware of Hum. Hum is helping other incarnate entities on this planet right now. But I can communicate with any entity I wish, and some of them are not so high frequency, some of them are very, very high frequency, and some of them are extremely evolved. And these days I can do it whenever I want to. And so the need to have the levels of long-term deep meditation to get to the point where I can communicate with some of these entities is not necessary in the way that it used to be when I was first writing the text that became the History of God. So I don't need him anymore, but I still think about Hum, like I think about Anne, for instance, on a sort of a regular basis. And I'm grateful for what he did for me, because although Hum is also an Om, there was no real need for him to put himself out, or it to put itself out, to come down to lower frequencies and put itself at risk of being sort of addicted to lower frequencies, although I'm fairly sure it wouldn't be, to help me move forward and lift me up the frequencies so I can do what I'm doing now. So I'm always grateful to Hum, and I'll make a point actually of discussing and advertising the help that Hum's given me every time I do a Traversing the Frequencies workshop. So thank you for that question, and thank you for reminding me to actually verbally and positively thank Hum whilst I'm doing a satsanga for the work he's done with me. Okay. Next question. In Crete, I'm in Crete now. An alien told you that they have a base there because the energies are pure and the local inhabitants have not yet ruined the energy flow. Is it common or rare to find places where the energies are pure? I've felt that way about certain areas of Kauai, but I'm not sure. Are the flowing energies never pure around large cities? Do we who are spiritually minded help make energies pure where we live? Yes, well, I mentioned the last part first. Yes, we who are spiritually minded do help make the energies pure where we live. We do make a big difference, actually, not only with ourselves, but within the vehicles that we use, the homes that we live in, the cities and suburbs that we find ourselves in. We make a big difference. The individuals who are spiritually minded, who want to work in a spiritual way all the time, are really keeping the frequencies high, because right now we're still in this downward spiral, and I'm totally amazed that it hasn't bottomed out yet. It's like a reversed logarithmic curve. It's sort of slowly bottoming out, but it is going to go up. I thought it would be starting to rise again at the end of August, but it's not quite yet. I'm seeing sort of December now, and you'll have to remind me to look at it and to feedback as to whether I do see the frequencies rising again. But with everything that's going on around the world right now, there's a lot of individuals who are becoming, shall we say, addicted to certain things like conspiracy theories and gossiping around the way that individuals are working, and various different political conditions are working. I don't know if you heard that, but there's a lot of cats in the area. If you remember on the Andal, I was talking about Anne's cats. Well, some of them are around here now, but one or two of them like to show that they're superior to the others. Some of them aren't the same cats, by the way, now, because some of them have also moved back to the energetic. But it's interesting that sometimes they have a little bit of a tiff between them. Okay, so it is quite rare these days to find places that are pure and high frequency energies. Certainly places where there's not so much not so much human habitation is where you'll find more pure energies. You've either got to go to somewhere where people are working with nature and are not working in an egotistical way to find pure energy flows that are either uninhibited or haven't been affected by mankind, or they're augmented by the fact that humans are working with nature and with energies. So what we find is that we make a difference. Cities tend to be terrible, certainly where there's highly dense levels of population, and it tends to be better in countrysides, although certain areas within countrysides can also be a problem, certainly with smaller towns or cities where it's quite insular. You tend to find that that's also an area where potentially low frequencies can also collect. But in reality, in general, one finds that where mankind isn't is where the purest energies are. And if mankind is working with the energies and in a coherent way with the energies or with nature, then the energies are much higher as well. Okay, next question, again in Crete. The energies in Crete, the aliens told you that they are monitoring all of you there. Why and how are they monitoring us at various places on Earth? All places, special places? Can we become aware of their monitoring activities? They're monitoring them by simply observing. You know, I mean, that's the most important thing. And they also look into us as well. They can look into the way in which we're thinking. I think JM will remember back in 2012, I held one of the first Traversing the Frequencies workshops in Santa Fe, in the States, and one of the things that was noticed was that there was again a group of entities there, incarnate but higher frequency entities, who were observing what we were doing. And one of the things they were saying to us was that this shouldn't be happening yet. This is far too early. But it is happening, so it must be happening for a reason. In terms of the workshop and how we were working together to create a condition where we could all traverse the frequencies and project our consciousness or sentience into different levels while still incarnate. And so they were looking into our third eyes then and seeing how they were working and seeing how they were functioning in terms of how different individuals within the group were using their third eyes. So they look into us as well. They look into how we're functioning energetically, as well as observing how we're functioning from an incarnate perspective as well. So they can say, so they move around. They look at they monitor television transmissions, news transmissions, communications of all different types, sizes and shapes, whether it's through mobile telephony, internet-based communications, or communications at a high level between different governments. They look at all of these different things, and also how we're working with each other, and how we think about each other, and how we relate energetically to each other. So they can see all of this, all of these different ways in which we interact with each other, and as a result of that, they can observe us and see how we're progressing with our particular project of working with it with totally individualized free will whilst being in a low frequency environment. And the way to become aware of them is basically just to meditate on the area that you're existing within and open yourself up to just seeing with your perceptual vision or your third eye what's happening around you, and you'll feel them. You'll probably just get an impression of them being there at first, but eventually you'll start to perceive them in various different ways, either hearing them, knowing that they're there, intuitive communication, or even communication or visual communication through the spiritual or third eye. So just meditate on opening yourself up. Be guarded though, don't forget to protect yourself before you do open yourself up to the higher frequencies, because it's not too much higher than where we are now. That's probably the 4th or 5th frequency level. So it's outside of human visual range, but still within the perceptual range. And just feel them being around you first, and then you can start to communicate with them. Okay, next question. In the next dimension up, we are told there are many planets and nebulas close to us. Are these nearby planets filled with life, including humans who exist in that dimension? Are they aware of us? Well, the human being, the human body is not an uncommon, that is very common in various different ways around the different frequencies within the physical universe. Next dimension basically is in the 13th frequency, so it's the first frequency of the first subdimensional component of the second full dimension, and they are in the same space, so to speak. It's very difficult for people to understand this, but everything exists in the same space, irrespective of density, frequency, or dimensional condition. So basically, if we are able to project our consciousness through various different ways, certain yogis can do it. We can do it by the TTF meditative process. We can start to observe and communicate with those different entities or beings within the various different frequential levels, within the various different subdimensions, within the various different full dimensions as well. So those who are in the higher frequencies, let's say the first frequency of the first subdimensional component of the second full dimension, which is the 13th frequency, because they're a higher frequency, they would be aware of us, but not bothered about us. They have their own stuff to do, basically. And so observing what we're doing may be a function of what one or two of them may want to do, but in general, they're like us. They go about their business whenever they need to and keep going. And not really worry about what any other entities are doing, because if you think about it, when we're at a higher frequency, we understand the bigger picture fully. And the level of fullness, by the way, depends upon the level of frequency we're at. But in essence, if we can consider that the other entities are various different aspects of the true energetic selves, and each of those aspects of true energetic selves are experiencing, learning, evolving to help the evolutionary level of their TES, and also help the evolutionary progression of the source, and beyond that as the origin, then they're happy to concentrate on that and not really worry about what we're doing here. But they will be aware because they're higher frequency, but they won't be too worried about interacting with us or intervening unless it's part of some particular work that they've decided to do. Some of them might even be involved in helping us in some other ways as well to try and come out of this particular low frequency, shall we say, curve. Right, next question. In the history of God, some aliens tell you we have many professions just like you have: doctors, engineers, artists, analysts, computer programmers, energy specialists and psychologists, etc. I'm delighted to see that they have engineers and computer programmers, but I'm a bit dismayed to see they have psychologists. I would like to think that advanced races that live 2,000 to 3,000 years never need psychological counselling. Is this the case with advanced races? Psychologists, in effect, when they're higher frequency, isn't to do with the sort of psychological issues that we have at our low frequency. It's to do with understanding how the aspect creates its own personality or ego as a function of incarnation. So they look at it from a different perspective. They look at how the ego is created and how the ego is dissolved and how the ego is enforced or augmented or is reduced. And so they tend to spend most of their time seeing how they could better themselves. So the psychological aspect of what they're doing is to do with betterment rather than analysing failure, which is what we do here. So it's a different thing, different type of psychological thing. They need it to understand us and other incarnate races that aren't experiencing individualised free will, but they also need it to understand how they can better their own interaction with other entities that are incarnate when they're also incarnate as well, and also work on how they can control the manifestation of the ego. Okay, good question though, very good question. Next question is, again, in the history of God, an alien explains that their ship's travelling is controlled by a computer that is many millions of times more powerful than yours. This is an unfathomable multiplier. Do any of these advanced machines ever achieve any degree of human awareness or consciousness? Do they ever evolve into souls? Are any of these machines living amongst us, as it were, right now? I believe one of the lectures I gave was about artificial intelligence, and could robots or mechanical intelligence house an aspect or soul? And the answer is that it would need to have the same level of connectivity as the spirituo-physical aspect of what we've got in our human body, and the other different variations of the human body and different types of incarnate form that are around in and around the different frequencies of the universal environment. So they can never evolve into a soul, from my understanding. They could gain a level of sentience, but they couldn't evolve into a soul, because a soul is something which is created by the individualization of sentience and energy from source, or the individualization of sentience and energy from a true entity itself, which is a different thing. Obviously, a being is an aspect of sentient energy as well, because it's created its own sentience through its own evolution condition. But although they may be very intelligent and very sentient in some respects, because there's nothing to stop artificial intelligence being creative, understanding what's being created and modifying that creation and improving it and reanalyzing it. I'm not seeing any particular way in which it could develop into souls, unless there was some way of creating the spiritual physical interface that we have with the human body. Now, if you think about it though, the human body is nothing but a robot anyway, because without the aspect interacting or interfacing with the various different templates associated with the human form, the step down function in the 10th, 9th and 8th levels of frequency, and then you have the spiritual physical levels, which are the 7th, 6th, 5th and 4th, which also correlate with the upper astral, lower upper astral, lower astral, upper lower astral and lower astral, and then you have the gross physical frequencies, which are the 3rd, 2nd and 1st. And so, in itself, the human body is a mechanical interface, and it could be classified as a robot. And so it's even though the ships that some of these entities use, from an incarnate perspective, have computers which are many millions of times more powerful than ours. If you think about the computational power that was given to, for instance, the Apollo moon landings, and the many millions of times greater that an iPhone 6, for example, was in comparison, it just makes you wonder. Some of the mobile telephones now have got a terabyte of data storage without even thinking about it. and their computational ability is far superior to any computers that were available even 5 or 10 years ago. So we in ourselves will be creating something that will have various different levels of computational power, close to what these entities, these incarnate entities, have got. But by the time we get there, they will have also progressed and gone even further. Okay. Next question, from the aliens in the history of God discussing energy exchange between our physical and spiritual bodies, they state that they're helping us to develop machines to do this. Are they? Is anybody you know actively working on such a machine? There was a number of different individuals who were working with observing the human aura. Okay. And one of them, I can't remember his name right now, but was looking at understanding the human aura as a function of using it as a way of creating some form of medical diagnosis. But we haven't really got to the point yet where any machines that are readily available are able to understand how the connectivity works between the various different energy bodies, for instance, or energy templates associated with the human form and the gross physical aspect of it. This is quite some time away. What they're trying to do is help us, give us, in essence, machines that would allow us to see the human aura properly, see the energies around the human aura properly, and see the energies and see frequencies of a higher level, so we can start to see above and beyond the third frequency level right now, and see into the fourth frequency level. And that once we can do that, then that'll be a big quantum leap, because it will show that there are a lot more entities and beings occupying the same space that we give spiritualists credit for, basically. So it's still work in progress. And this is what I'm picking up now. I'm channeling the information as I'm going through. I'm still picking up. It's still work in progress, but mostly it's being looked at from a medical perspective. I've just managed to remember it's Harry Oldfield, actually, and Harry Oldfield was very, very good. If you can look at go on the internet and look up Harry Oldfield. I actually met Harry Oldfield a long time ago when my late father-in-law and late wife Anne met him at Birmingham University, and he was showing what he was doing then. He was very, very good. He's also a pioneer of different forms of Kirlian photography as well. Very interesting gentleman. And he's working on various different methods of, shall we say, interacting with or interfacing with the various different energies, but only from the perspective of looking at the human aura. Okay, so Harry Oldfield, look him up. Very intelligent, very clever person, and very creative individual. The last question he's here. Oh, very, very quickly. I'm being told he's not actually getting help from aliens. He's getting the odd download. For him, he's got the capability of picking up information from his own intuitive function and getting downloads. He's not what I would classify as getting help from aliens. He's doing it himself by picking up information through his own intuition. And I'm being told he's not always getting it right. So keep going, Harry. You'll get there. But try to think. I'm being told to tell him to try to think laterally. Okay, that'll make a big difference. Things are easier than you think. Okay. Last question. From the history of God, a modern way of doing this would be for a man to live either off-world or underground. The SE seems to imply that human race can live underground. Is it possible with no sunshine or seasons? Has this happened? Is it happening? Will it happen? So it's a comment about one of the ways in which we could work. Now, there's all sorts of different ways that suggest that there may be a condition where the human being may live underground and maintain the natural environment above ground, maybe even farm above ground, and live in underground sort of cities, for instance. I'm not seeing this happen. Actually, there may be a few little areas that are used for the monitoring of. Okay, I'm being shown a future Earth here. I'm being shown that the Earth will eventually be returned back to its greenery. This is in about 3,000 or 4,000 years' time. And there will be some minor underground, I'm being told to call them cities, but they're going to be about monitoring and working with the advanced computer technology that will, with what we call robots as well, of course, artificial intelligence, that will be there to help monitor and administer maintenance to these areas of forestry and animal environments and farmland. But what we're shown here is that most of where we will live will be in ionospheric and stratospheric cities that will be linked into higher levels of altitude and space, so that they seem to hover, but they won't need anti-gravity, for instance. They will have parts of them sort of in further orbit that will act as like anchor points. And I'm being shown that there will be enough space in between these vast stratospheric or ionospheric cities that allow much needed light from the sun to be able to bathe the earth and allow things like forests and rivers and stuff to be cleansed by the cosmic rays, but also for the forests to become green through photosynthesis and all these sort of things. So about 3,000 or 4,000 years, we're going to realise that we need to maintain the planet in its natural environment, and we'll move off the planet, so to speak. But we're going to have also a number of individuals who are going to maintain the maintenance of the natural environment. But those will be in, for instance, underground cities, although they won't be huge, but they will have a lot of, shall we say, command and control areas that will allow various different forms of mechanical interface, such as advanced artificial intelligence that will be there to maintain and farm the lands for those individuals who need to have sustenance or farmed fruits and vegetables and other various different proteins that are there that don't require animal bodies to be destroyed to allow them to allow the incarnate version of mankind to exist. Okay, well, I think that's answered the question. It's a wonderful picture I've been seeing. Actually, it's quite incredible that we're going to eventually get it right. It's going to do with something about we'll end up moving up the frequencies, and it'll all be very clear, and it'll all be very clear to the point of it that people will just drop their weapons or drop their thought processes about being greedy or demanding or materialistic. It's like it won't be like a mass ascension, but it'll be like a sudden realization. We're going to get to a point where we're going to almost destroy ourselves, is what I'm seeing here. But in doing so, we'll suddenly realize the importance of who and what we are, and how we affect each other. It won't be a world war as we know it. It'll be something else, but it'll be something that's going to make us turn and change the way we work with individuals, their attitude. Okay, right. So That's the end of the questions, and thanks to JM for those questions in the far Western Hemisphere. And we're going to go into now the meditation process that's going to help us to change our reality. Okay. So I want you to sit in your straight-backed chair if you can. Close your eyes, put your hands palm uppermost on your upper thighs. Closed eyes, gently focused on the location of the spiritual or third eye, or the origin of it, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And I just want you to look at, in this state, the aspect of what's happening around you. What is your life? How is it working? What do you do? How do you work? Who do you work with? How do you interact with them? What do you earn? How do you spend it? How do you interact with your loved ones, your partners, your children, or your parents? The environment that you're in? How do you recreate? I didn't say procreate there. How do you make the most of the time you've got? How do you educate yourself? What's happening with you right now? And I want you to see the parts that you think or you feel aren't appropriate or aren't appropriate anymore. What led to you being in this current level of interaction with your environment and those individuals that you interact with within the environment? What led you to be in this reality right now? At what point, in the past if you want to call it, what point further upstream in the event stream within a certain event space changed to make you move down this particular event stream to create this particular reality? Go back up the event stream. Go back into the upstream, so to speak, series of conditions that created this particular reality. See the thought processes within yourself or other individuals that have led to the creation of this particular reality. Trace it back upstream. See where this particular reality became a possibility, or the possibility of a possible possibility, or the possible possibility of a possible possibility. See where this particular possibility of this reality was manifest. Go back to that point. Consider it like you're moving from the bud on a branch of a tree, moving to the next biggest branch, then going to the next biggest branch. Each time you go to a branch, you see a different direction you could have gone into, but you go back down to the mainstream. Go to the next mainstream, go to the next mainstream, go to the next mainstream, working back until you see the largest branch and almost the trunk. Go to where the branch diversifies or fractalizes from the trunk. And rather than choosing to go down or making the decision to go in one direction, which led you to go down that particular branch, decide to stay on the trunk instead. And all of the different things that create the reality that you're in now start to correct themselves back into the mainstream of the trunk. So the reality that you're in now starts to dissolve because it no longer exists. There was nothing to create its existence. It may not dissolve in its entirety because other individuals may also be supporting it. But notice how you're becoming detached from it. Notice how the change from one particular event stream within an event space that creates the possibility of a reality has a decision point. All realities have a decision point. A point where one or many individuals decide to go one direction rather than another direction. That's not just in movement or travelling, it's also in, for example, a thought process, a desire, a need, a want, an observational movement. See how you can change where you are now by moving back up the event stream to the point where this particular reality was created, or the decision that you took to participate in this particular reality. Bypass it. Go back down that branch, straight back to the point where that branch was created. Then choose to go into the mainstream of the next biggest branch, or even follow it back down the different branches of which the different smaller branches are part of, until you meet the point where the branch fractalizes from the trunk. The use of a tree in this example is particularly useful. Okay, move down upstream, so to speak, which is down the branches as they join together to create one big branch, and then that big branch joins into the trunk. See yourself actively making the choice to stay in the trunk rather than move down into that branch. See yourself nipping that particular reality in the bud. It no longer exists. You never went down that road. You stayed on the main high street, so to speak. You stayed in the trunk. You didn't become part of the tree as a branch, and then a smaller 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 branch. Notice how you can return back to the mainstream and change your reality by refusing to make that decision in that event space where you did make the decision to come down this particular branch. Use an example where you've got to where you are now and trace it back. And at the point where you made a decision to do this rather than that, go forward rather than backwards, go up or rather than down, to go left rather than right, to do this rather than do that, choose to do that instead, and that'll change this particular reality, this downstream reality, by changing the decision point in the upstream condition. See yourself using your intuitive decision not to go down a route which is basically an evolutionary dead end. Everything that's around you from a reality-based perspective now starts to dissolve and go away, leaving you in a neutral condition, back into the mainstream, back into the trunk, so to speak. Practice this meditation on every reality that you choose to reject and move back into the mainstream of the trunk if you wish. It's very powerful, extremely powerful. And if enough of us get together, we'll be able to change larger or even global realities as well. Okay, so slowly come back into the room. Now you've decided to change a particular reality. If you wish to change it now, you can do. If you wish to change it afterwards, after this particular satsanga, and then do so. Remember, the reality where you are now is like the bud on the end of a small branch. You trace the branch back to the next point of fractalization, to the larger branch, move down to the next point of fractalization, to an even larger branch, move down to the next point of fractalization, to an even bigger branch, and the next point of fractalization where the branch comes from the trunk of the tree. That's the way to trace back to the point where you made the decision to support the creation of this particular reality in the way that it's currently manifest. Okay, so slowly come back into the room, open your eyes, take a drink of water to help ground you. And remember this process. It is very powerful. You can use it at any time and it works. It 100% works. Just know it's going to work. Well, that's it for this September Satsanga. Next one's in October, and I'm looking forward to the October one. Hope you've enjoyed this particular Satsanga on the 28th of September. Thanks to Kevin Moore and The Moore Show for helping to broadcast these Satsangas. Thank you to all the other people who are transferring them to paper, English, Chinese and Spanish. Thank you to those wonderful people who are doing that, who are doing the transcripts. And sources love to you all, my love, and stay in contact and stay listening to the Satsangas. Namaste to you all. Did you see the aliens in Crete?